Hi guys, welcome to my channel. My name's Chloe and welcome. In today's video we're going to be doing another Let's Not Meet on Reddit. I love reading these, they're so interesting. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to be reading them off the iPad today, so I'm going to be looking down and reading, but then interpreting my own thoughts onto it as well. So let's get started. This one's called My Old Neighbour Who Broke Into My House When I Was 11 to Hide from the Cops. Let's not meet. When I was 11, I lived in a pretty bad neighbourhood. To paint a picture, there were very common street races, gunfights and fight clubs around. I actually was tricked into joining one at one point and could never leave my house after I didn't go back. All this in mind, I hated being home alone. My parents, knowing this, allowed me to have a friend over when they would be late, to keep me calm, as I had very bad heavy anxiety. I had a neighbour who was a boy around my age, maybe a little older. When I went outside to play with or walk my dog, he would talk to me. He wasn't a complete stranger. We'll call him R.A. In bracket, run away. One day my parents were going on a date night and would be out really late, around about 2-3 a.m. So they said I could have a sleepover with my best friend. All was going well and we were playing some video games in the living room when suddenly, around midnight, my neighbour started crawling through my dining room window. What? I'd close everything. Window locked, door locked, lights off. Someone who has heavy anxiety, I was prepared for such a situation and had a knife on me and instructed my best friend to get my dog. My dog would bark and someone would come in and he'd bark at them and then he'd start wagging his tail and getting all excited like, "Ooh, new person, can I have a fuss?" He is like a teddy bear, he looks like a teddy bear. He acts like he's a big husky or something and is a teddy bear. Anyway, I wasn't scared of this kid since I've seen him fight and figured I could take him if I needed to with all my precautions in place. The conversation isn't word for word, but it went similar to this. Me: "What the hell? Why are you crawling through my window? What do you want?" R.A.: "Whoa, relax. Relax? You just broke into a house and you told her to relax? No way." "I just wanted to hang with you and your friend. I could hear you laughing from my house and wanted to join in." That's just weird. I'd be like, dude, get the hell out of my house. I'd be calling my parents like, "Come home, please." "Not supposed to be here." My mum and dad would go mad. "Alright, I just want to hang out for a little bit, get some food and play some games. Come on." Then he refused to leave and I don't remember most of what I said. I didn't feel threatened and decided to let him stay, since he wouldn't take no as an answer. He stole a good amount of my food too. One thing I noticed was that he was avoiding the windows but didn't make it obvious, so I tried not to think about it since I was scared. I went home after about an hour and my friend and I didn't think much of it. The next morning I was in the front yard doing who knows what, and when I see R.A. getting his ass beat and screamed at by his older sister, I laughed and asked what he did, and she told me something that made my blood freeze. She told me he was hiding from the cops as he beat some kid so bad he sent him to the hospital and damaged some property at the school where the fight took place. I avoided that house and those kids as much as possible and we moved shortly after that. So kid who ran away from the cops and hid into my house. Let's not meet again. This one's a bit gruesome by the sounds of it, so if you're easily scared, if you're quite young and you're watching, just be cautious, okay? It might get scary for younger viewers. Anyway, this one's called I Was Almost Kidnapped and Beheaded as a Child. It's a disclaimer on this one. There is some mention of violence towards children. It's not explained in any graphic detail, but it's still there. Again, so if you're a younger viewer, just be cautious. This story might not be for you. I've always wanted to share this story and I've decided to use an old throwaway account since I usually just lurk. I have no real way of proving my credibility, but if you ever visited or live near a rural part of South Asia, you can probably vouch for me in saying that it's not a lot more plausible than one might assume. Also, this ended up being a lot longer than I thought, but I wanted to recount it precisely the way I remember it. I had one of those moments recently where a lot of things came together in my brain to make sense of an event that my child mind couldn't properly comprehend at the time. She is of South Asian descent, and since I'm mixed, she tried really hard to make sure I'm in touch with my culture. This meant that as a child, we made a lot of frequent visits back home. Every summer I can remember was spent there, and then it suddenly just stopped after this incident. My mum's family back home lived in an extremely rural part of the country. There was a lot of poverty surrounding our family home, so we rarely left our relatively nice part of the village. I was never allowed out to explore, and coming from the concrete jungle that is London, I was already so curious. I'm going to explain what happened on this particular day, the way I remember experiencing it, and then I'll explain what I failed to realise at the time. You always think afterwards, like, oh, I should have done that, or oh, I should have said that. But when you're in the heat of the moment, your brain thinks differently. So there's always that, oh, what if, and what if I did this? I was 8 at the time. One of my uncles from a neighbouring village would often visit with his children, and when they did, my mum would let me go with them to a small hut-like shop that sold sweets and snacks like 15 minutes away from the family home. My cousins were 11 and 19 and both male, and it was broad daylight. To get to the shop, we walked through a small DIY road on both sides, and it was called the Jungle Road. It's basically just lots of trees and bushes as far as you can see. You can't really see anything beyond the trees. It's just a lot of greenery. I'm mixed with East Asian, and I definitely get my looks from my dad's side. An obvious foreigner in a rural part of back home, to creepy men that would tell me I was beautiful because I have pale skin. My mum warned me about these men and made sure I knew to stay away from them. So the road to the hut was paved with creepy people making creepy comments, and my cousins basically telling them to leave me alone in less pleasant terms. There was also a group of young guys. Some of them had motorbikes and some were just chilling. One of them waved at me. He seemed friendly enough, and I had met so many people that my mum was convinced I must remember from last time. I had zero recollection of. So I just waved back and went about my day. Once we got to the hut, we immediately started losing our self-control with snacks. The owner was super friendly, and he let us try a bunch of the sweets, mishits that he had. So like broken sweets and stuff. He also had coffee ice cream for the first time. And one of the ladies that worked as a cook both loved coffee ice cream, so I thought it would be a nice surprise for them. I asked for 3 and the guy gave me 4, and so my hands were full and they were quickly melting, and he told me to run, go home quick. I told my cousins I would get a running start, and once they finished they could catch up with me. I would still be in their line of sight, plus it was daylight and it was a busy road. I start running back. There were a few older aunties stood at the top of the road, and something about their presence gave me a sense of security. I felt a lot safer knowing they were there, paired with the fact that my cousins were able to see me clearly. I felt comfortable enough to just walk back, leisurely, minding my business, eating my ice cream. I passed a group of guys, and the one that waved at me came over to me. He said, "X's niece, right?" X being my uncle. And he jokingly took one of my ice creams and said, "She got an ice cream for Mama." Mama means uncle in our language. And so I just assumed he was a friend of my uncle's. He asked me when I arrived and how I was finding the country. He was so friendly, and he didn't look like a stereotypical creep. That's how they get you though. That's how they get you. When I said I was going to go home, he said, "Why don't you let Uncle take you? You can ride on my motorbike." No. This is what I mean, especially when you're about 8 years old. You just don't know. Just don't like think of things properly, as in like you've got a young mind. You think stuff like that, oh, it's okay, he knows somebody I know, and yeah, then you instantly trust them. Don't trust anybody. I think that's when something clicked in my mind that he maybe wasn't the friendliest uncle I thought he was. That's also when I realised I was pretty much circled in and was surrounded by the group. It's also when I realised I couldn't see my cousins or the group of old ladies, which also meant that probably couldn't see me. I wish I could explain in words how helpless and afraid I was. I had all the threats in the world explained to me by my mum. in a country where I knew I was vulnerable and had to be cautious, and I still managed to find myself in a dangerous situation. Luckily, my cousins came running and shouting, probably because I was their responsibility. The guys ran off into the jungle. This creeped me out because there was nothing in the jungle. It was just trees as far as I could see, and I knew that it would be nearly impossible to find them and all of that. We caused quite the scene, and the villagers seemed to react as if they were already on edge. When we told my family what happened, I was basically on house arrest, and my mum refused me out of her sight. I was pretty shook up about the whole situation, so honestly I was kind of grateful for that. I put it down to my paranoia, but at the time I would get overwhelming feelings of being watched. Our village is quite small, like amongst them everyone knows everyone sort of thing. My uncle is also a big community figure. He's very well known amongst the villagers, which is why the men probably put two and two together that I was his niece. Having foreign family over is usually a pretty big deal, and having a niece that is mixed race was also a very big deal. I'm sure the word got around. He realised that there were a group of men on motorbikes who would frequently go past our house. They stayed a decent distance from our home though, and that they weren't anyone we would have known. It's creepy to think about now, the lengths that they were going to. A couple of days before we were due to fly back, I had my second, last and worst encounter with this particular friendly uncle. It was night, and it was like every other night where we would play board games or card games in the front room because it was hot. I went to my bedroom and I was playing on my Nintendo DS. Big up to Nintendo DS's. I should probably feed my dogs from 10 years ago on Nintendogs. Oh, a throwback. Literally. When I saw out the corner of my eye someone at the window staring directly at me, oh mate, if someone did that to me I'd scream. It was him. The worst part, he had the most creepy, sick and twisted smile I've ever seen. He put a finger to his lips, but I didn't. But I did the literal opposite and started screaming hysterically. I had been on edge since the ice cream incident, so what might seem like an overreaction was just my natural response. I can't really tell you what happened next because no one has ever told me. My very large uncle and his also very large friends are not known to be the friendliest of people, but I was told he was dealt with and that it would never bother me again. We recently received a wedding film from one of my cousin's weddings, and part of the film was her leaving to get out the venue. And I noticed that the jungle was no longer there. It had basically been cut down. For the first time I could see beyond the greenery. That's when my mum explained to me that my uncle had it cut down not long after that particular visit, because one of the head cutters, it sounds even more sinister in my language, my entire life I've wondering what would have happened to me if I'd got on the motorbike, but now I know with reasonable certainty that what his intentions were. During that time, a gang had been kidnapping beggar children. It took a while for the village to realise, because it's not unusual for beggar children to go missing. When we were there, people were vaguely aware that it was becoming a trend. A couple of months later, a head was found. It became known to our village, but people tried to keep quiet and avoid getting a bad name. The problem went away once a lot of the greenery was cut down, so there was nowhere left to hide. But it's also when they realised the magnitude of what had happened. The weird thing is, I've known about the head cutters for a while. I knew it was something that had occurred in our village, but for some reason until recently I never put two and two together. Now that I have, I think often about what nearly happened to me, but more importantly what happened to a handful of children in our little village. I think about the fact, beyond our relatively nice small circle, no one thinks about them, no one is haunted by their deaths. The creepy uncle with the motorbike, let's not meet again. I wish the children had never met you, and I hope no one has ever. Then there's an edit. Because a few people have been curious, this took place in Bangladesh. Also, thank you for upvotes. Oh, creepy. Yeah, I agree. I think she would have been in that horrible situation. We'll read one more. It's called Just Trying to Escape, I guess. I live in Mexico City. Part of the infamous insecurity, nothing happens to me in years until this. I was on my way to the house when a random guy started talking to me. When this happens at the city, most of the time, are guys that want some money. If you ignore and continue, walking is enough. I did that and kept walking, but the guy followed me and insisted on talking to me. I thought maybe he was someone that needed some advice with an address or something, so I stopped to take out my earphones and listen to him. Bad mistake. He asked me if I work at a call centre that was near there. I said no, sorry, and continued walking. The guy followed me and started talking more, saying shit like he saw me there and that he thought that I really work there. I said again, no. By the way, in all the conversation, I kept walking. The guy then said that if I don't want... What? The guy then said if I don't want some weed, that he is the dealer of that zone. I said, no thanks. Guy getting more aggressive asked me questions like where I was going, if I was alone, etc. So the guy's following her, like, oh, do you work here? I'm sure I've seen you. And then he's like, want some weed? Want some weed? No. He asked me to give him my cell phone. Yeah, because if you just walk up to a random stranger like, hi, can I borrow your phone? Yeah, sure, why not? Here you go. Who does that? Nobody is going to give you their phone if you ask. It's stupid. He asked me to give him my cell phone. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. He then said to me, I'm not trying nothing that many guys of this brand were Sorry, the grammar in this one's a bit crap. I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. Then he said to me, not trying nothing that many guys of this band were watching us. This is how it's written. I'm sorry if you don't understand. I was like, shit. If this guy is telling the truth, I might only lose my phone. Maybe I'm getting kidnapped. Don't know if he had a gun or a knife, so it was like 50 versus 50. If he had a gun, I'm screwed, but if he had a knife, I have a chance to run because I was not that close to him. I decided to run. I know very well the streets of the city, so I got into a subway. I was like, damn, I think I did it. I waited at the subway sometime before talking to them to make sure no one was following me. Then I restarted my way home now at the subway. For being even more sure about that, I leave the first train and then wait for another and took it. And again, take a look if someone followed me, and nothing. Still nervous as I started walking to my house. At the middle of the way, there's a university, so there's a lot of people. Okay, at Mexico, it's a good advice to watch your back. Just be sure. And I did it again. And God knows that was really near to my house. I saw a guy behind me looking at me. I was like, F, but think maybe it's just a random guy and you are overthinking because of what happened not long ago. So I think it's okay. This creepy guy is chasing me. I'm going to know it now. I was already at the university zone, so there's people around and a lot of places to sit. So I stopped walking to sit and pretend I was waiting for someone. That's good though. Like, if you ever feel uncomfortable, what I tend to do when I'm walking alone, I just get my phone out, make it look like I'm on the phone. I also do that to salespeople in the streets, even though I work kind of in sales. Just go avoid the same people. I'm just like, oh, miss, and I'm like, I'm on my phone, sorry, there is no one on the phone. The guys kept walking, was only my ideas, but if not, I'm effed up. So I take a sip, and the mother effer did the same. Damn, I was really close to my house. I didn't want the guy to know where I lived. So I stood up and started walking another way, and now with the idea of searching for a police of the university. I walked very fast into a bunch of people trying to lose the guy. I saw that he had also stood up amongst the same time I did, and I was effing nervous, but I lost him with all the help of the students that were there. I feel like that title was a bit clickbaity, but there you go. Those are the 3 stories for today. I hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe if you want to see more, because I will be doing more of these videos. Remember, stay safe, don't trust strangers, and don't get on any motorbikes. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.